We are live. Wow, that was a little bit more traumatic than we thought it would be. For those of you just tuning in live to our story, today happened to just be the day that Google decided they were going to unveil a new Google Plus onto the world. And that has meant lots of delays, and our page was down for a while. I couldn't get to the event. Tim couldn't get to the event, but we're both here. So anyway, Tim, please introduce yourself to our audience.
I'm Tim, or Timothy Allan, as I'm known, but everybody just calls me Tim. I couldn't use Tim Allan really as my producer name because of the comedian who ruined my name for me. So yes, I'm Tim, and I'm the Groove3 author, musician. What else do I do? Computer programmer, the whole bunch of everything, really. All the nerdy things I like to do. Yes, that's me.
What? All right, so my first question is very simple. Give us a little rundown about your career in audio and all the rest. And you can kind of see my cat now in the corner. By the way, hi, I'm Warren, content manager for
I'm mesmerized by the cat.
All right, well,
let's see. Well, way back in the late 90s, I started, it would have been late 90s, I think. I got into this game. I got into music a little later than most of the kids these days, the 12-year-olds you hear on Fruity Loops who were putting out the bangers. So I started in a little late. I think I was kind of early 20s when I first started getting into it. But like back in the day, I started listening to dance music before EDM became a thing. Started listening to dance music. This would have been like, I remember Dance Mix 95 from Much Music was one of my favorite tapes ever. So if that gives you an idea of when we're talking about.
Hey, well, that's when I was involved too. So don't make yourself sound too old, because then you're going to make me sound old too.
That was the good old days. That's when you'd go to a nightclub and you couldn't see the DJ. So it wasn't all about, everybody looking at the DJ. It was about the music, which was kind of fun. So yeah, that was about the timeline when I started getting into things. And then I got a job as a computer programmer, actually. And so we would sit and we'd program on computers all day, and we'd have like digitally imported playing in the background. They'd be streaming old Sasha and Digweed and all the Global Underground stuff. And so I liked listening to it. And so being in the computer industry, this was way back kind of like during the .com boom, right? When the internet just kind of started exploding. So I started making some pretty decent money, which let me kind of go out and buy a bunch of music gear that I normally wouldn't have.
It's where all our money goes. It's where all the money goes.
That's right. So I went out and I bought a synth, and I bought some monitors, and because I wanted to kind of start making my own stuff. And then the big hike started on the musical journey. So I started, what did I have? I bought a Korg Karma back in the day.
I remember those.
I had some Event 2020s, I think, were my first monitors. And then I had one of those little Korg drum machines, the ES1 drum machine, I think. Yeah, and just started mucking around. And then, as you do for years and years, until you can put out something that that you want to be able to show your friends that you're not completely embarrassed of.
Sure.
And then I think 2006, I think I had my first release on like an actual online record label on Beatport, and iTunes wasn't around back then. Beatport, iTunes would have been, I don't know. I remember Beatport was the best. So 2006, yeah, that was the first release. And then 2007, actually, no, sorry, I'm backtrack a bit, because in 2003, I moved to Australia. My girlfriend and I decided, we were living in Canada at the time. My girlfriend and I decided, because we had both lost our jobs. Remember the .com boom, how everybody that was making a lot of money all of a sudden started making no money?
In fact, I was part of the .bomb.
Exactly.
So I know exactly what you mean.
Yes. So the .bomb happened, and so I found myself without a job. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now actually my wife, She was also without a job for a completely different reason. So we decided, well, let's go on a vacation. We'll go to Australia for a year. So we had this big plan. We're going to go to Australia for a year. And we're going to hike around and do this and that. So anyways, we ended up staying in Australia for 12 years.
This is a long hike.
It was a long hike. So this, yeah, so I had my first label release while I was living in Australia, because Melbourne has a very, very vibrant music scene. And so it really got me jazzed up, as opposed to Calgary, Alberta, where I was from, which at the time had a very small, it's all folk and rock and stuff. And it's all live bands. And I mean, there's a good scene, but there was no electronic music scene. It's getting better now. So yeah, 2006 had my first release. 2007 started up a group called the Hong Kong Blondes with a buddy of mine. And we actually did quite well. We on a tour. We did an Australian tour. We got Area, which is the Billboard, the Australian Billboard. Got a bunch of chartings on there. We remixed guys like Empire. We did Empire of the Sun's first remix. We did.
How about that?
We actually did quite well. We put out vinyl, which was exciting. Which I still owe them money for, I think, because we never recouped on that one.
Well, you win some, you lose some.
But hey, I got a vinyl record, which is kind of cool. And then I just, I kept making tunes and kept making tunes and kept making tunes. And then I did a remix for a guy called Mark Loverush, who owned a label in the UK. And he also runs a promotion company there. So he really liked the remix. And so him and I started working together more and more. And it was one of those very reciprocal things where he had a ton of connections because he ran a promotions company. And I was getting, better and better at doing the dance music stuff. So we started kind of doing this collaboration, him and I, where he had the contacts and would get the gigs and I would start doing the music stuff. And so I put out a ton of remixes. And so I did remixes full time for about 3 or 4 years, I think. And that was my full-time job, which was kind of cool. And then just to make things even busier, I started a mastering house called the Mix Plant in 2010, I think. So I've been doing that now. I run a couple companies. I still run a programming company and a mastering company. So the Mix Plant is now in its 5th year. And then I had a baby. And then things started to slow down. I personally did not have the baby. I was involved in it though. And then
one would hope.
Yeah. and then so I kind of slowed down the remixes a bit because my time was getting a little more precious. So over the past 3 years or so, I've kind of tapered off doing the remixes and stuff. And I'm now just doing a lot of mastering. And I teach at a physical school in Calgary, actually, called Beat Drop. I'm one of their educators there, I guess. So I teach a mixing and mastering course and then an advanced Ableton Live course. And I mean, geez, that's about up till now.
And that brings us up to date.
And that brings us up to now.
All right, well, that brings me to my next question, which is, somewhere in there, you found time to become a Groove3 author.
This is true.
How did you find your way into Groove3, and how did that come about?
Well, it was, funnily enough, through some of my remixes. There was like I was saying, there was a very involved producer scene in Melbourne, right? And they would have this event once a month where all the producers in Melbourne would get together and they would go down to a club and they would play all their stuff on the big system. And they'd give each other tips and, basically you just go down, you'd hang out and have some beers and be able to talk synths and stuff with all your nerdy synth friends. And so I met a bunch of people through there. And it just so happened that one of the guys I met through there knew one of the authors at Groove3.
Oh, very nice.
So Craig,
you're right, sure.
Yeah. So Craig said, well, hey, you're working with Ableton a lot and you do all these remixes, blah, blah, blah. How about I put you in touch with the Groove3 guys? So I said, sure, no problem. So I started up a conversation. I mean, this would have been, I don't know. This would have been probably 5 years ago, if not more.
Right.
Maybe more. Yeah. So anyways, so I hooked up with Groove3 and did a trial video and it went well. And then now I've got, I think, 14 in total, plus some of the spotlight sessions. So yeah, Groove3 and I have been pals for years now.
Absolutely. So speaking of the spotlight sessions, those are the most recent things you've done for us, and that's our most recent initiative as a whole. So how would you approach doing sort of a done-in-one spotlight session instead of some of your longer series. Some of your series, like producing EDM and Logic and things, they are incredibly vast in scope and really cover almost everything possible.
Yeah.
Whereas a spotlight session, it's a much shorter deal.
It's the 10-minute quick deal.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, it's the same. I wish I had a more interesting answer, but they're all very much the same. So, like, if I have a spotlight session, I've got this one thing that I need to get done. Whatever it is, right? So I'll kind of nut out beforehand what I'm going to do, and then I just do it. Whereas with the longer ones, like the really long ones, I think the Logic one was almost like a track from scratch, wasn't it?
Hmm.
And so in that one, my my only goal is at the end have a track that doesn't suck, basically, and then navigate people through that, and as well as my thought process through that as I'm making the track. So in all those really long ones, I don't pre-plan anything really. I will just go and use my experience, and so it's the same as a spotlight session. So I have the final outcome, make a track that doesn't stink, and then just navigate my way through there, and then just do it. So yes, it's 7 hours versus 10 minutes of recording, but it's approached the same way.
All right, so I have a question that came from audience, and the question is, how do you approach the workflow of a songwriting session versus a recording session?
Well, it depends if the songwriting session is for me or if the songwriting session is for a client. Because then, if I'm getting commissioned to do a remix or write a song or, a ghost production or something for somebody, they have very specific requirements. So I have to adhere to those and kind of put my own twist on it, but stick to the rules really. And then with a like a Groove3 video or a spotlight session, again, you have these rules that you have to adhere to. So I'll get a kind of rough gist of it beforehand, and then just kind of dive in and just see what happens, basically. But I know what the final outcome is. If, again, just to backtrack, if it's something that I'm doing just for myself, um like, how do I start a track? Is that
Yeah, I'm assuming. By the way, there is a Q&A app. So if you're watching and haven't asked a question yet, you're welcome to click the app and type in a question. And I'll see it here. But I believe the questioner was asking about how would you start a track on Ableton Live
right?
or
Right.
Logic or whatever you're doing on a strictly recording session, like the song is done or whatever,
Yeah.
versus something where you're composing.
Just making it up from scratch. I've kind of hummed and hawed between a few different methods over the years. I used to start with a bit of a template. I'd have Ableton, I'd have a bunch of audio tracks set up and a bunch of MIDI tracks set up, and then some returns with some delays and reverbs and this and that on it. And I found that a lot of my tracks started sounding very similar because I'd always just end up using the same plugins and the same effects and this and that. So these days, I really, if I open up Ableton to start a song, there's one audio channel in it, and that's it. And so I start from scratch, and I rarely save presets as well. So pretty much everything is start from scratch, and it's I wish I had a more solid answer, but I don't always just start with a kick drum, or I don't always start with synths. That varies as well. So
Sure.
it's random. It's chaos, really.
So these days, do you find yourself doing remixes for Canadian dance music, Canadian radio? Is it global? Are you still doing remixes for folks all over, or how is that working out?
Most, yeah, well, I mean, probably 80% of all my remix work when I was doing it came from overseas. I did a few Australian artists, almost nobody from Canada. No, that's not true. I did a remix for Brian Adams. He's very Canadian. And but no, and lately all I've been doing is mastering and teaching. So I think probably in the past 2 years I haven't put out a single remix. But yeah, when I was pumping them out like crazy, it was all overseas. It was all Europe and the UK.
All right, so my final question is, what is on the horizon for you musically with Groove3? You can answer that any way you'd like.
Yep. Well, Groove3, because the Spotlight sessions are so new and fresh, I believe I'm going to be doing a few more Spotlight sessions, which reminds me that I need to ask the internet to hit me up on Twitter or Facebook or whatever and tell me what you would like to see in these Spotlight sessions. If you'd like to see anything broken down or explained or whatever, hit me up, because I'm always looking for new ideas for videos.
Excellent. All right. Well, Tim, thank you very much for hanging in there as we were trying to figure out why Google wasn't responding when we were trying to get this hangout going. And for those of you who are watching this live, thank you. Thank you for sticking it out and for doing all of this. This will be available on our YouTube page. You'll be able to watch it at any point. For those of you who couldn't log into Google Plus or weren't able to see this live for the same reasons that we almost were not able to make it happen. So Tim, thank you very much for joining me here.
Thanks, Oren.
And it was a pleasure, and we will see you again on Groove3 with some great series. Take care.
Sounds good. See you.